Hi, and thanks for tuning in. Today we'll be reviewing what to expect from callback interviews. We'll tackle what happens before, during, and after, and what to do if and when you have questions in between. Use this resource in conjunction with the callback interview guide on the OCI 1 page. First, to make sure everyone knows what we're talking about, a callback interview is usually held at the firm's office and consists of a series of 30-minute interviews with one or more attorneys. Often the interview involves a lunch attended by a couple of junior associates. So after your screening interview, you may feel anxious waiting for the phone to ring. During OCI, many, but not all, callbacks come quickly. Firms in larger markets, especially New York, will frequently give callbacks within 24 hours, some even as early as the day of the screener. But other markets, particularly the South and on the West Coast, tend to move a little bit slower. For those markets, it could be days or even a week before you hear. Stay tuned to OCS newsletters for guidance on following up with firms you haven't heard from. But here are a few pointers on the topic. You should begin emailing these firms 7 to 10 days after meeting at OCI if you haven't heard from them. Silence does not always indicate rejection. Firms like to move quickly, but not all callback decisions are made within 1 week. Some firms extend callback invitations in waves. Some candidates are invited shortly after OCI, but others may be on a quote-unquote hold list that's consulted if the firm decides to meet additional candidates. So in terms of who to contact, you can email the recruiting contact in the NALP directory or on the firm's website, rather than the attorney who interviewed you. And what might you say in any outreach that you conduct? You should attach your most updated resume. In the body of the email, you can flag any updates that you've made to your resume. For example, you finalize an externship placement. If you have no updates, simply restate your interest in the firm. Connect your interest to a point discussed with your OCI interviewer, noting him or her by name. You can ask about the status of your application at this point. If you'll be visiting the firm's city for any reason, let them know and state your willingness to meet with them during your visit. In terms of scheduling, when you receive an invitation for a callback, the general advice is you'll want to schedule it quickly, within 24 hours of receiving the invitation. The goal being to hold the callback interview as soon as possible, since offers are generally given on a rolling basis. If you have other callbacks in that geographic area, try to group them, but do be mindful of how much interviewing you can reasonably do within a given time. When you call to schedule your callback, you may be asked whom you met with on campus, so have the interviewer's name ready, what your practice area interests are, if you have any dietary restrictions. As we said, many callbacks have a meal built in, and if you'll be meeting with other firms while there. These are all good questions and help the firm tailor the callback experience to your interests. You might consider emailing your screening interviewer once you've scheduled to let them know that you'll be excited to be in the office on a given date. Here's a few more tips. Check your email, including your spam and promotions folder, and voicemail often after your screening interview. Make sure your voicemail greeting states your name and sounds professional, and make sure there's room in the voicemail inbox. Finally, make sure that you have a professional profile picture in your Georgetown Gmail account if you have any picture at all. Thinking about preparing for callbacks, there really are no secret callback resources to conduct to prepare for your interviews, but you will want to go beyond your OCI preparations. Really, in tone and format, the interviews are similar to screeners. But for OCI, they know that you're meeting with multiple firms within a condensed period, so there's only so much depth you can go into with any given firm. Presumably, you'll be going on fewer callbacks, so their expectation of your knowledge of the firm is higher. You want to understand what they're known for, how they differentiate themselves from their peers, and how and why you want to contribute. Review the notes from your screener and read the news so you're prepared to discuss legal issues, and you know if they've been working on a big case that's getting a lot of headlines. Additionally, you should bring updated resumes, references, transcripts, and writing samples to give to each employer. Make sure you know where you're going and who your contact person is at the firm. At least a day in advance, the recruiter should provide you with a list of your interviewers. If you haven't heard from the recruiter by this time, by the morning of your interview even, follow up to request a schedule. So the callback format can vary from firm to firm, but generally they're like a series of back-to-back screening interviews for about half a day total. The content of the callback interview typically mirrors that of screeners, though you might find more behavioral questions than what you had in your screening interviews. You can refer to our resource on behavioral interviews on the interview page. These interviews may include lunch or dinner with what is usually staffed by junior associates. Make sure your narrative is consistent across interviews. For example, don't tell one attorney that you want to do corporate and another that you want to be a litigator. Ultimately, both you and the firm are looking for the right fit here. So on the morning of the interview, this can be an anxious time. Make sure you manage your stress. Go for a run, take some deep breaths, do yourself a favor and get to the office a little bit early so you're not worried about the commute. If you're more than 10 minutes early, just hang out in the lobby of the building to collect yourself before going up to the interview. If you're not familiar with the city that you're in, or even if you are, budget time for the commute there. Maybe longer in rush hours than in prior visits you've made. Be polite to the receptionist and everyone you meet during your time at the firm. Everyone in the office plays an important role, so treat each with an equal amount of respect and deference. Try to be enthusiastic and excited. Remember, even if you're nervous, you want to show that you're excited to be there. So, what is a firm looking for? Well, first, as we said, this enthusiasm, it really can be contagious. Greet each interviewer with a firm handshake, a smile, and friendly eye contact. The firm and you are both assessing fit, so notice the little things. Are the doors open? Do the attorneys know each other? Do they speak to the paralegals? How do you feel when you walk through the halls? Can you see yourself coming back there? As we mentioned before, be consistent in your answers across interviewers. Some variations expected, but a complete pivot on an answer from one interviewer to the next is likely to raise eyebrows. If you made it to the callback stage, grades likely aren't to be a big issue, but do think through how to address them if someone brings them up. If you go to lunch, mind your manners. Meals can be a great way to get to know the firm's attorneys in a more casual setting, but remember that it's still an interview, so don't let your guard down too much. It's generally a good idea to steer away from alcohol, but if others at the table order a drink, you may order one and nurse it slowly. There's more on meal etiquette in our 2-page callback guide on the OCI1 website. A big overall tip to remember for any meal or coffee reception portion of the callback is that it's still part of the evaluation. You're still in an interview setting, so do be mindful of that. After the interview, and before you leave the office, ask the recruiter for a timetable of when you might expect to hear. When you get back to your hotel or are traveling back from the callback, write down your immediate impressions of the interview. They may help you in your decision-making later. Also note if there are any follow-up questions that you have. You should send a thank you note to the recruiter and to each attorney within 24 hours. Make sure you read them carefully to catch any mistakes that might be embedded. So when traveling to the firms, they'll be paying for your trip there. Take care to keep all of your receipts when you travel and submit them promptly to your host firm. Typically, the host firm is the first firm to invite you to the interview in that given location. Don't worry too much about who you designate as a host firm. Recruiters don't read too much into it. It's simply an administrative designation that they use to split costs. You can use the expense form on the NALP website, hyperlinked here, for ease in coordinating. Make copies of your receipts before you send them, and if you have any questions, be sure to ask them throughout the process. So there may be a wait after the callback. Tom Petty once said that the waiting is the hardest part. That rings particularly true here. You might hear back quickly, or it might take several weeks. For some context, nationally, your odds of turning a callback into an offer are just over 53%. So you want to make sure that you're not missing out on other opportunities while waiting to hear back. But those chances certainly vary by region, city, and even firm, and definitely by candidate. Focus on what you can control here, not the odds. Go in prepared and enthusiastic. Doing so will give you the best possible chance to secure an offer. At the same time, it may make sense to stay on top of your OCS emails and Simplicity job postings and keep plugging away at your search. Just like with callback offers, summer associate offer timing can vary significantly by market. If it's been 2 weeks, you can check back in per our earlier guidance. So if you get the offer, that's great. Hooray, we're excited about that. But now what? For help deciding between the offers, consult our resource on the OCI1 page, including a guide called, very creatively, Deciding Between Law Firm Offers. And feel free to contact your advisor to talk through your decision-making. If you accept, you want to do so by phone and follow up by email so that your acceptance is in writing. If you're declining, a best practice would be to try and connect by phone, and if you can't reach your contact, to follow up with an email. This field is built on relationships, so exiting the process professionally can help you later in your career. Keep track of offer deadlines and records of your correspondence. In terms of those deadlines, Georgetown's guidelines turn on the size of an office's summer program. Generally, if a firm has 10 or fewer summer associates in a given office, Georgetown asks employers to give the students a minimum of 14 days to make a decision. If there are 11 or more summers, then our students should have 28 days. These time periods run from the date of the offer letter, and extensions certainly can be negotiated with the firm. To keep the process fair and transparent, no more than 5 offers should remain open at once, and 14 days into the offer period for larger firms, shoot the recruiter an email to reaffirm your interest if the firm is still in consideration for you. As I said, this is our general guidance. If you have questions about our guidelines and or how they're square with an employers with which you've interviewed, definitely just contact your advisor. So this is certainly an exciting and pretty tiring time. Make sure throughout that you're considering activities to de-stress yourself and keep you sharp. Try not to abandon what those activities are. So have some fun, keep perspective. No matter what happened, your career is not necessarily defined by this one period of time. So remember to take care of yourself and each other first. Good luck, and remember that we're here to support you and help you with whatever you need.